Good afternoon, everyone. We've still got about 60 seconds to go, so a small group today, and we'll get underway shortly. And apologies for the change of time. Originally 9 a.m. today, but I had to move it to 12 noon today. All right. Still a few people to come. We'll get underway shortly. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on strategies to be more influential when public speaking. This webinar comes from the need to be persuasive, to be effective, to be influential when speaking. A lot of people focus on controlling nerves and using PowerPoint and being funny and being clever, but unless they move people to a different way of thinking, your ability to influence is indeed questionable. And the very act of public speaking is generally for the purpose of moving people via education, via persuasion, via influence, to create a change process, to move people to a different way of thinking, to a better place in their lives. So welcome Hannah and welcome Sharon. So we just got underway. So today's webinar is about putting some more influence and persuasion into your presentation. So Peter Dew is my name. Most of you know me. I'm a public speaking trainer and coach, and my passion is helping audiences, helping individuals find their passion, find their message, so they can share their knowledge and their wisdom the way they want to with their communities. Participating in webinars, please ask questions as we go, take notes, and as you know, I'm recording this webinar should you want to watch it later on. I think the most important thing is to think and apply the knowledge to your own circumstances. You've got a workshop coming up, a seminar coming up. What are you going to do to be more influential? If you've done one recently, cast your mind back. What could have you done to be more influential and more persuasive? And my wish would be that you pick one or two things from today's webinar that you can start to incorporate into your presentation style. All right, I'm just going to check. Can I check in with Hannah and Sharon? You've just joined us. In the question box, can you just type in that you can hear me? Everything's clear. And you saw the webinar transition. So Hannah, Sharon. Chat, so we've got live chat. So thanks. Yep, all clear. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, Steve. And thanks Paul. All right. So 3 things I'm going to cover. I like to keep the information into chunky bites, easy to consume. First thing, I want you to revisit, think about your first impressions when you go to a presentation as a speaker, your first impressions as you go to a meeting, your first impressions as you go to a job interview even. And what are some ways to demonstrate your credibility? So you're asking me to change my behaviour, to change my beliefs. We're in the midst of a Australia-wide election campaign and politicians are speaking to us left, right and centre, and I would question some of the credibility of what's being said by many of the politicians. So how do you demonstrate your credibility? Because you're asking me to follow you, but why should I trust you? What is it you're going to give me to help me believe in your message? And finally, from Harvard University, 4 sources of influence that can be quite powerful and quite useful if used the right way. And when I say influence, I just want to acknowledge the difference between influence and manipulation. So my aim today is to influence you to use some of these tools in your next presentation. My aim is not to manipulate you. Manipulation is not the right thing to do. The difference between manipulation and influence is simply your intention. If your intention is positive, is good to help people, then you're trying to influence them. If your intention is to take advantage of people, to sell them a product, a second-hand car that they don't need, to buy something they don't need, then that may be manipulation. So the ways we manipulate people, the way we influence people are kind of the same. The question is, what is your intention? What is your purpose for having that conversation and trying to persuade someone to follow you? I'm talking about influence, not manipulation. So first impressions count. You've probably heard the saying, you only have one chance of making a good first impression. Every other impression after that, of course, is a second, third, fourth impression. And women, on average, will form a first impression in 5 to 6 seconds. Men will form a first impression in 7 to 8 seconds. So how do you look when you walk into the room? How do you carry yourself? What is your non-verbal communication saying? Are you doing a good handshake? Is it a mirror and match? Or are you holding out the wet fish? Or are you doing a crushing handshake to dominate and turning the hand over so you're on top as you shake hands? All of these are sending non-verbal signals. First impressions really count. Are your shoes polished? From a job interview perspective, I've been told that women panelists will look at the heels of a man's shoe as he leaves the interview room. So nice polished toes, nice shiny toes front of your shoes, but I've neglected to polish the back, so you see scuff marks and leather exposed because I'm a shortcut person. So make sure your first impressions count. Do you know what your first impression says about you? Have you looked at yourself in the mirror? Have you asked someone to give you feedback on, when you walk into a room, your stance? Are you calm or do you rush? Are you comfortable with silence? Being comfortable with silence is a sign of being comfortable, a sign of being credible, and it helps people build trust. You're not rushed, you're calm, you're not worried about anything. So Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote several books, but What the Dog Saw, did some research, and he had an interview panel, and then he had the applicant presenting, and during that 1 hour interview he video recorded the entire interview, so there was a camera there, and he got the interview panel to rate the this applicant, on their soft skills, so their emotional intelligence, their loyalty, their honesty, their integrity, their reliability, the kind of things you don't get in a curriculum vitae, in a CV, the kind of things you don't get from a resume. So let's say we've got 2 applicants interviewed at separate time, one positive, one Mr. Negative. Both got 10 years experience, both got MBAs, master's degrees, very similar backgrounds. So their academic, their experience are kind of equal. So now we need to look at their soft skills because we're trying to get the best applicant for this job. So the video recording is done, but the interview panel rates the applicants on a soft skills scoring sheet after 1 hour of job interview. Loyalty, integrity, reliability, honesty, etc. So what happens is that Malcolm Gladwell then took off the first 15 seconds of that 1 hour video of the live job interview. So he's taken the video, he's taken 15 seconds, and now he's gone down the street and interviewed 20 random people and showed them that 15 seconds of video. It is not a lot. What do you get in 15 seconds from when I walk into a job interview? You get a handshake, you get a greeting, you get a smile, you get eye contact with me. I probably take a seat and I might say a few, nice words. There's not a lot I can do in 15 seconds. So this 15 seconds is then shown to 20 random people, and the same questionnaire is then given to those 20 people. The rate on my loyalty, honesty, integrity, reliability, and the 1 hour over here, so you got 60 minutes versus the 15 seconds. Same score, same scoring chart, and it was 85% correlation. Let me simplify that for you. You have the job or you do not have the job in the first 15 seconds of walking in the job interview. So please, if you worry about what does my nonverbal communication, what does it look like? Does it matter? Yes, it does. So your first impression is so valuable. So please make sure you know your first impressions. You have control of it. The way you stand, the way you smile, the way you breathe. Deep, confident breathing as opposed to shallow, nervous, indecisive breathing. If you want to be influential, if you want people to follow you, be more aware and in control of your first impressions. I've got this photo of this gentleman here, and I guess it's fair to say he's disorganized. But when you walk into a meeting with a handbag, a laptop bag, a book or a satchel, that also says disorganized. So when you walk into a meeting, a job interview, walk on stage, don't drop your palm cards, don't drop a pile of notes. Keep it really simple. And that makes a good first impression. The second thing is to demonstrate credibility. Credibility is how we build trust. It's how we connect with people. That's how we show our honesty and our authenticity, through our credibility. I speak in the area of public speaking, of how to overcome your fear of public speaking. And I share my story, which is that of someone who stutters. And then people say, but wow, that's amazing. You now do public speaking. You do it quite well. And you say you weren't able to speak because of your stutter. that gives me credibility. A radio announcer who says, come on, I've got a beautiful radio voice. You can do public speaking. It is easy. Just pretend everyone's naked. Let me help you do public speaking. Now, I'm not saying they don't have credibility, but the fact that they're a radio announcer and they speak for their living doesn't bridge the gap between someone who's afraid and starting to do public speaking. So here's the question. In your area of expertise, what's one thing, and I'll get you to type into the question box, Q&A box, what's one thing you do to create credibility? So Sarah, okay, Sarah does skincare, and she has an Instagram account, and she posts and writes about skincare and after skincare and how to remove makeup. So she's seen as an expert in that area. Yep, good idea. I also write blogs. You can follow me on LinkedIn, and I write a newsletter once a month that creates a blog. Sharon, always do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Beautiful. Walk the talk. Follow up on promises. Post workshop. If you're going to give someone some information, do follow up. It's quite interesting. I was just in Mildura last week, and a young lady came to my workshop again, a different workshop. She said, oh, Peter, you never sent me those resources you promised me 12 months ago. I felt so bad. I felt very small. I'd let my own self down because I like to make sure I do what I say I'm going to do. So this year I gave her my resources from the workshop she attended, and I followed up with last year's resources as well. And I did say, oh, why didn't you remind me? And she said, oh, I think I lost your email. But that's no excuse from my end. Credibility comes from consistency. Some examples, I've been to a time management workshop. This is a long time ago in my previous profession, and the time management workshop started 5 minutes late, went to lunch late, and finished 10 minutes early. I mean, maybe that's me being pedantic and that, but I think a time management workshop should start on time. All right. So here's some good news for you. Credibility is not just one thing. It's your credibility stack. It's a range of things. Consistency of action. Do you write content? So I'm going to try and be smart here and type. So create content. And these are blogs, LinkedIn, newsletters. Do you publish? Do you write to your peer review journals? If you're a professional, a nurse, a health professional, an engineer, I was in Mildura and another person worked for agriculture and had written and spoken at a conference around agriculture, around sustainability. And so that gives you credibility. That gives you credibility. Another thing that we can do is we can borrow some credibility. So what I mean by this is, especially if you're new in a field, so you're a new engineer and you've come up with a really clever idea to increase productivity. And why would anyone follow you? You just started, you're just out of nappies, to coin a phrase. So sometimes you will find that the Canadians or the Americans or the British have done something similar. So maybe you're proposing a new social housing or a new program to reduce homelessness in your community. It's never been tried before. You don't have any evidence it's going to work. It's going to cost some money. Maybe the Canadians, maybe you've got the idea from the Canadians who are doing a similar social housing project to reduce homelessness, and it was very successful, and you're proposing that they do the same, and therefore you borrow that credibility. When I speak, I often start with a quotation. It could be from Winston Churchill, it could be from Mark Twain, it could be from Ralph Waldo Emerson. Could be from Thomas Edison. These are renowned academics, and generally their thinking is that of thought leadership. And if someone very clever says one thing, and my idea, what I'm sharing with you, matches what they are saying, then really I've just borrowed their credibility. So if Mark Twain says there's two kinds of speakers, those that are nervous and those that are not, therefore everybody's nervous, and Peter Dew says nerves are just a normal part of public speaking, it's the same thing. Mark Twain's right, then I've got to be right. That's borrowed credibility. Statistics will help you build credibility. Don't just pull numbers out. Precedents, walk the talk, there's a whole range. So as you try to get people to trust you, just remember it's kind of a stack of things. It's layering the credibility. All right, I'm using Zoom for the second or third time, so I need to remove that text box before I can move on. All right. So the 4 sources of influence, according to Harvard. The first one is your position. You're the CEO, you're the director, you're the manager, you're head nurse, head honcho. You can ask people to follow you because of your position. If you're at low power, generally you have low influence. So if you're just a cleaner, a patient care assistant, and you come up with an idea for improvement, it may not be easy for you to get people to follow you. Now, one exception for this, of course, is health and safety, where anyone in the workplace, anyone in a mine site can call something as unsafe. They can tag it, they can shut it down, they can bring it to someone's attention. You don't have to be a manager to notice that something's not safe and do something about it. Now, having said that, I would not use my positional power as my main means of influence. It's kind of the stick approach. You will do as I say. Or the carrot approach. If you don't do it, I'll give you a negative performance review. I will report you higher up. It's not a good source of influence, I think, generally, especially in the public speaking world. So yes, maybe you've got high influence through your position of power, but I wouldn't use that generally. Of course, the next one is your emotional influence. And this is your ability to remain calm while under fire. This is your passion, your authenticity. This is your genuineness. These are the stories, the survivals, the vulnerability, the bad things that happened that you've survived, that you've managed to work your way through. And when you talk about emotional influence, it doesn't apply solely to our neurological process, to our logic. It goes more down into our gut. It's called a visceral response. What stories can you use to show and create emotional connection so you can influence people? Expertise. This is a great source of influence. So your knowledge in the field, Your expertise, previous experience will help when you put forward ideas. But we have to be careful. I am a baby boomer, so I'm what's sometimes referred to, Hannah and Sharon and Sarah, as male, pale and stale. So I think my knowledge and expertise is valuable, but new and emerging science around millennials and how they learn, they need current. So I need to remain current and contemporary with my knowledge if I want to use my expertise. But if you went to a doctor and the doctor said to take some antibiotics for an infection, you would probably follow them. They're not your boss. They can't make you take it. They're not appealing to your emotions to take it. They're just using their expertise, their knowledge to influence you to do something. Now, it doesn't always work. In the case of obesity, a doctor telling you to lose weight 9 times out of 10 won't work, and they may have to use some other ways. Now, if we just take a step back, Jacinda Ardern is the Prime Minister of New Zealand. High power, high influence. The recent tragedy in Christchurch she has handled magnificently. If you read any of the blogs, the LinkedIn posts, the Twitter feeds around the world, her leadership, her influences has been brilliant. And it's mostly through her emotional power. It's not through her fact that she's the Prime Minister. However, she did go back to Parliament and say, we will ban guns in New Zealand. We will pass legislation that will reduce and restrict gun ownership so this type of event never happens again. It's her position. She's using positional power to do something. But she didn't start from that. She started from, first of all, being very compassionate, very authentic, so much empathy. Absolutely brilliant example of influence through leadership, emotional leadership. And the fourth one is your nonverbal communication. So know your first impressions, but also know what your body says about you. Palms up tends to be approachable, palms down more credible. Blinking the eye is more softer, more approachable. Freezing the eye, more credible, more assertive. Your voice, a flatter voice for credibility. An upward swing and a bob of the head is more approachable. Do you come across at job interview? Do you come across when you present as a credible person, someone to follow, or just as a nice, entertaining speaker? Lovely and approachable, but I wouldn't walk on hot coals. I wouldn't change my behaviour as a result of your nonverbals. Are you aware of the baseline of your nonverbal communication? How much you find out? I'm going to pause. I've got 3 or 4 minutes. How might you find out what people think of your baseline nonverbal communication when you walk into a room, when you speak from a podium? Just waiting for a few responses. Thanks, Steve. Yes, you can video record yourself. Very scary. Yeah, just hand over your mobile phone to someone. Or you can even get one of those little tripods and put it off to the side, the video recording yourself, and just record, and then you can stop it when you're finished. If you're going to use video, can I get you, video is really powerful, by the way. It doesn't lie, and you can email it to a colleague, a friend, or a coach. But a caution with looking at yourself in video, don't be hard on yourself. You need to disassociate yourself from the speaker. So you become an impartial coach, looking and learning from watching the speaker, and probably 5 minutes is all you need. Any other ways of, yes, you can ask a trusted friend or colleague who you know, what is it like? What do you come across like when you perform in meetings? Some people become very soft and passive. Some people become aggressive and they don't even know. So, to be more influential, You can manage your first impressions. You can demonstrate credibility. You've got 4 sources of influence: your position, your emotion, your expertise, and your non-verbal influence. Use some of those skills so the next time you get before an audience and you want them to follow you, to adopt your new way of thinking, try and be more influential. I've got a host of workshops coming up around Australia. We've got Broome in about a week's time, Karratha. We've got Darwin in October, Bunbury in June, Perth in June. I'm off to Kuala Lumpur next week speaking. So please share these with your friends, with your colleagues. And if you need an in-house workshop, I'm happy to assist. Next webinar, 6 steps to make your message more sticky. So goes hand in hand with influence, but the message, we can put some hooks in so they are more memorable. Just before we wrap up, are there any last questions before we go? So I like to stop on time, short, sharp webinars, just one little aspect of public speaking, how to be more influential. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for your attendance. Send me an email if I can be of any further assistance to you. Bye for now.